This episode of Hitched to Homicide contains depictions of sexual assault. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. If you or someone you know is a victim of sexual violence, please call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 800-656-4673, or you can chat online at online.rain.org. All calls are free and confidential.
April 24th, 2004, Laurel, Maryland. Walter Rogers is fast asleep in bed while his wife paces in their living room, shocked, angry, and devastated. Her 2 children from a previous marriage and a young son are also fast asleep when they hear a loud boom. Their mother tells them she doesn't know what the sound was, but the next morning, Walter Rogers is dead. Question is, did he deserve to die? This is the tragic story of Laura Rogers, mother, murderer, or vigilante. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potterworth. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends in the Malay Peninsula,
You pick some of the most obscure places.
it's the mainland in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Salamat datang, salamat datang, salamat datang.
Very nice.
There you go.
Well, if you're listening in Southeast Asia or wherever you're listening to Hitched to Homicide, hit that subscribe button. Then you can like, rate, and review the podcast. That helps other people to find us, other true crime aficionados.
Yeah.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button below. You can find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And if you want true crime with us every single day of the week, please go join our closed Facebook group, The In-Laws and Outlaws.
A lot of fun.
Go to Facebook and type in H2H In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a few questions, and you're in.
Yep.
So go join. We've got lots of new people in there. So welcome to all our new family members.
Yeah.
I like to post photos and other information in there. Just this past weekend, we had our little derby party in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the only 2 people who picked the winning horse were
Me and my sister.
Rob and his sister. How about them apples, y'all?
Well, there you go.
And you can't make that up.
So a shout out to my sister, Cheryl.
There you go. Good job, Cheryl. Mystic Dan.
Yep.
We'll see how he does coming up in the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
Now, this case doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but I did want to talk about it. I think it's really, really important. Before I get started, let me thank some sources: Legacy.com, The Baltimore Sun, Murderpedia, Maryland Accident Law Blog, and Oxygen's Snapped.
Okay. All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
Laura Ann Roby is born on June 30th, 1968 in Howard County, Maryland. Her parents love her very much. It's a stable household and a loving environment. She has 2 sisters. Her dad, Roy, is a computer technician for the NSA.
Oh, wow.
But Laura isn't as gifted as her father is.
Okay.
And by the time she got to high school, she was really struggling just a little bit. She had to work pretty hard. But as soon as she graduated, she was gone. She ran away and got married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she ran away to do it because her parents didn't approve. And I get that. She's super young.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long before Laura is pregnant.
Okay.
She gives birth to a baby girl and quickly gets pregnant again.
Wow.
This time, she's having a boy.
Okay.
But things aren't going well with Laura's husband, and before she even gives birth to their second child, she's moved back home with her parents. And at this point, Laura is only 22 years old.
Man.
Yeah. She's really unhappy. Her first marriage has failed, and she's back with her parents. I think that's kind of a universal thing, whether it's the 90s or 2020 when COVID hit.
Yeah.
When you move back in with your parents,
Yep.
it's kind of a blow. It's a little bit of a blow to your ego psychologically.
Sure.
And she's got one child and another on the way.
Okay.
But in 1992, all of that changes because Laura meets Walter Rogers at a Clint Black concert at Merriweather Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland.
Okay.
Walter Gray Rogers Jr. was born on January 24th, 1961 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. North Carolina. His parents are going to divorce, but he has 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Big family.
Okay.
He's a contractor, and when Laura meets him, she thinks he's the bee's knees.
Wait, I thought this isn't the 50s. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, ain't they the bee's knees?
My mom always said that. That's the bee's knees.
Cute.
But she does. She's very enamored with him. She thinks he's smart and handsome. She thinks he's charming. She thinks he's a real family kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Walter is 31 and has been married and divorced twice.
Wow.
And he has 2 daughters and 3 sons from his 2 former wives.
Okay.
But he liked it that Laura had children. And she liked it because she thought that made him really a family guy. Mm-hmm. 3 months later, they start dating. And 7 months after they meet, the 2 of them are living together with Laura's children at her parents' house. Then Walter proposed to Laura, getting down on one knee in the Pizza Hut parking lot.
Wow. Doesn't get any more romantic than that.
Well, there is a case, not a true crime case. Mm-hmm. I saw this online. Okay. I don't know what country this was in, maybe South America. Somebody's going to email me and tell me. But there was a man who proposed to his fiancée in a Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he posted the picture, and then people just piled on about, oh my gosh, he proposed to her in a Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then all these companies started chiming in, and they were getting like free cell service for a year. They got a honeymoon. Wow. Somebody wanted to pay for their wedding or what she was going to walk down the aisle in. Wow. So it's never a good idea to judge anybody based on what they do.
Yeah, the Pizza Hut thing I don't understand, but KFC, I totally get that. KFC is my very favorite fast food.
If you love Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I made Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, I can't eat it, but yeah.
Love KFC. So KFC, if you're listening.
Oh my gosh.
I'll take anything you give me.
He likes dark meat and a biscuit, guys, and then he's done.
Taters and corn.
I just have to watch him eat it because I can't eat any of that.
KFC.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. But after these 2 meet and he proposes and they get married, Walter would tell everybody it was love at first sight.
Okay.
Do you believe in love at first sight?
I believe in lust at first sight.
Was it love at first sight when we met, honey?
I don't remember the first 2 minutes of my life when you opened the door. I'm serious.
That's the right answer.
I know. Well, it's true.
He was convinced way before I was, y'all, that this was it. But he turned out to be right.
It took her another week.
I think it took me longer than that. But okay. But Walter's telling everybody it's love at first sight. And she's been through an ugly divorce, and she didn't really believe in love at first sight. You know, once bitten, twice shy.
Sure.
And she's a little gun shy over everything. Right. But still, he swept her off her feet. He's the answer to her prayers, right? Mm-hmm. A good man who loves her and also loves her children.
Sure.
Laura and Walter are married on August 27th, 1994.
Dun, 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 dun. It's my musical collaboration today.
That's actually our theme song, too.
I know.
Anyway, not long after, Laura and Walter have a child together. They have a little boy. But just 3 years into their marriage, things start to go south. Walter is abusive, both physically and mentally. Wow. And Laura is afraid of him. And by this time, Walter is very controlling.
Gotcha.
He's a contractor, remember? He's moving the family around a lot. And I read at least 6 times in 10 years.
Oh.
And another source contradicted that and said that they moved 12 times in 6 years.
Wow.
They're moving around a lot. So he's going wherever he gets a job,
Sure.
which means they have to uproot. Kids have to come out of school, then start in a new school.
Yeah.
And Laura never really gets the chance to make friends,
Right.
to get close to anyone.
Right.
Laura has said that the first 3 years of their marriage was wonderful. He treated her well. They got along well. But when it started to fall apart, it really fell apart.
Went to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, they're moving around a lot. Walter's controlling of everything that she does. She never really made friends, just like I said, and she wasn't actually permitted to have friends.
Really?
And she's not really permitted to work most of the time. He
Really?
was kind of like, my wife's not going to,
No wife of mine is working.
no wife of mine's going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, Walter, sometimes the women are the breadwinners.
Yeah.
It's a partnership.
Yep.
Walter is isolating her and mentally and verbally abusing her over and over and over.
Wow.
And Laura's not the only one.
Hmm.
By the year 2000, Laura's oldest child is 12 or 13. Her daughter's 12 or 13.
Right.
And she complains to her mother that Walter had run his hand across her chest. Now, at the time, they were living in Mississippi. It's investigated, and Walter is actually charged with a crime, but the case will be dismissed.
Really?
And I looked high and low for the information on that and could not find it.
So there was absolutely no records of that.
I couldn't find it anywhere. I
Very
really
strange.
couldn't.
Yeah.
By 2001, Walter has taken a scaffolding job in Laurel, Maryland. Walter moves his family into this rundown house in an industrial park. It's like a little apartment that's part of an office in an industrial park. And it's next to the job site where he's going to be working. And Laura hates living there. The kids hate living there. It's not a neighborhood.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I mean, it's an industrial park.
Yeah.
Which is the last place I would think you would want your kids playing, where there's like heavy equipment and big trucks.
Well, I don't think Walter is the type of person that's very compassionate and thoughtful and caring.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, no, he doesn't care. He only cares about himself. There are no neighbors. The kids didn't have a yard. All they had was gravel.
Wow.
And Laura called it, quote, hell,
Yeah.
end quote.
Sounds like it.
Once they move into this apartment in the industrial park, Walter continues to abuse Laura. And she's terrified of her husband. She did, quote, what I was told, when I was told, how I was told to do it, end quote.
It reminds me of the scene in Goodfellas when the young Henry, and when his father realizes that his kid hasn't been to school in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
Father was always pissed off.
And he's just very abusive and controlling. And
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing.
She feels like she can't leave him because he's never going to allow it. He would hunt her down, and she lived in fear of Walter every single day.
Wow.
She was afraid that he would hurt her, or worse, that he would go after the children. So she spent all of her time trying to make Walter happy, and she settled into this unhappy life thinking this is just how it's going to be.
Right.
She's just settling.
Yep.
He's throwing things in the house at Laura and at the kids. Like there are holes in the walls of this broken down apartment / half of an office in this industrial park that he's trapped them in.
Wow.
He's throwing furniture, and there was even a case where he threw a television at them.
Jeez. Wow.
But Walter isn't just focusing on Laura. Now he's after Laura's oldest daughter.
Wow.
Now we already know that he's like run his hand across her chest, even though nothing came of it.
Right.
He would beat her, hit her with his fists, his belt, everywhere on her body, including her face.
Jeez.
That in 2003, Laura's daughter tells a teacher at her Anne Arundel school that her stepfather was sexually molesting and abusing her.
Wow.
And he's been doing it for years.
Jeez.
And investigators, including police and social services, went to their home that very day. Laura's 15 years old at this time.
Right.
She tells the school that I'm not going home. I'm not going home. She tells them she's not going home.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
Yeah, they were going to go over to her parents' house with police and social services, and they're going to question Walter. She's not going back. She told him, if you do this, I'm not going, because she's afraid of him.
Yeah, I would be too.
Yeah. The daughter tells the Anne Arundel County Police that Walter is raping her and videotaping it,
Ugh.
as well as taking pictures of these sexual assaults.
Man.
Now, it's around this same time that the daughter's step-aunt, meaning Walter's sister, went to social services and says, look, Walter molested me when I was a child, and I am worried about my step-niece's safety.
Wow.
And when police show up to question Walter, he apparently gives an Oscar-worthy performance for the officials. And Laura is thinking, Walter might come after me, but he wouldn't dare touch my teenage daughter. And when Walter is questioned, Laura tells the authorities that very same thing. He would never touch my daughter. That she couldn't imagine that he would ever do anything like that to her. And if you notice, I'm not using the daughter's name. I know it. I know the names of all three of her children who are no longer children, but there's no need to say them. So I'm just keeping it out of the podcast, out of the story today.
Gotcha.
But this Oscar-worthy performance by Walter is going to work. According to Laura, quote, Walter was very convincing. He convinced me. He convinced social services. He convinced the police. He convinced everyone that he had done nothing and that basically he was a saint, end quote.
So this was around, 2003 or so?
Yes.
It's amazing how far social services have come since that time, because now if there's any hint of, impropriety, I mean, they're in there and they're taking names.
Well, I mean, and there are a lot of women out there, the hashtag went around, believe women.
Yeah.
When they tell you something bad has happened, it has happened.
Yeah.
Believe women. And this is a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
A 15-year-old girl.
I want to know what he said to convince them.
Well, he gives such a performance in this interview with the authorities. Walter Rogers openly weeps.
Yeah.
He's like boo-hooing.
Stop it. Stop crying.
Saying his stepdaughter was accusing him falsely. He said she had lied about the same thing before in Mississippi. She's a habitual liar.
Jeez.
And said, quote, my world is caving in. Health problems, just getting by. I didn't do this, end quote.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
So after he convinces everyone, Detective D.B. Long arrests the daughter for filing a false police report.
Oh my gosh.
After Walter forced the 15-year-old girl to totally recant her story. She is convinced, the daughter is convinced, that if she doesn't do what Walter says, Walter is going to kill her or her mother.
Wow.
So this girl, this 15-year-old girl, was convicted in Anne Arundel County Juvenile Court. And Walter just carried on telling everyone his stepdaughter was a liar. And to add insult to injury, Laura's daughter is pregnant.
Jeez.
So in the middle of this whole thing, the daughter reveals that she's pregnant. And her mother thinks the baby belongs to a boy at school. Why? Because that's what her daughter tells her. I mean, why not? No one's believing her.
Yeah.
She only gave a first name for this boy. By April of 2004, the daughter is 16 years old and about 7 months pregnant.
Wow.
And on April 23rd, 2004, Laura is doing laundry at a local laundromat with her oldest daughter because the family is getting ready to take a trip to North Carolina.
Okay.
Why? Well, Walter was moving the family once again, because what do you do if you're accused of raping your teenage stepdaughter?
Get out of town.
Pack up and get the hell out of town.
Yep.
Now, according to Laura, Walter told her to go to Walmart and buy a gun because he was concerned about thefts in their isolated area inside this industrial park. Now, I want you to remember that.
Okay.
According to Laura, Walter tells her to go and buy a shotgun.
Okay.
And while these clothes are drying, she's at the laundromat, and while these clothes are in the dryer, that's exactly what she did.
Okay.
She went to Walmart and bought a 20-gauge shotgun, ammunition, and then she went back to the laundromat, picked up the clothes, and left to go home.
Okay.
And according to Laura, she had to buy the gun because Walter was a convicted felon and couldn't buy a gun.
Jeez. The hits just keep on coming.
And I will tell you, I've looked everywhere for what he did wrong. I went back to the time he was born in Winston-Salem, went through newspapers trying to find somewhere where he was convicted of a felony.
Right.
But it must have been in another state.
Gotcha.
So she comes home with the laundry and the gun. She puts this new weapon under the bed in her bedroom.
Okay.
And that night, around 9 p.m., while Walter is out securing his tools so they could leave the house for this move, the daughter tells her mother, I don't want to go to North Carolina. She doesn't want to be anywhere where Walter is because he's still raping her. The rapes were outrageous, they were violent, and she couldn't prevent it, and she couldn't stop it either. Now, remember, Laura believes that her daughter's baby belongs to a boy at school. And her daughter's been in trouble before for lying, remember?
Yeah.
She's convicted of making a false police report.
Right.
And Laura, who in retrospect has said she's ashamed of saying this, but she tells her daughter that it's going to be hard to prove it. It's going to be hard to prove that Walter is sexually abusing you because you changed your story a year ago.
Well, I think she's got physical proof that...
Well, but the mother thinks that the baby is... Yeah. I'm not trying to take up for Laura. I'm not. I'm just telling you that's what she thinks.
Sure.
And Laura basically tells her daughter that she would have to make people believe her, and no one was going to believe her because she recanted her story and told everybody she was pregnant by this boy from school. And, of course, she only gives this first name.
Sure.
The daughter, she tells her mom... Well, I did that because he was going to kill me or you or both of us. But this time she tells her mother, I have proof, and I'll tell you where to find it. She tells her mom, Laura, Walter is raping me, and he's videotaping it. She tells her mother that the tape is in Walter's armoire behind his collection of Playboy magazines.
Oh, wow.
So Walter's very occupied. He's getting ready for this trip. Laura goes to the spot her daughter tells her about, and she finds a videotape. And again, Walter's outside, not watching over Laura or her daughter at this point.
Right.
Laura slips the tape into a camcorder in her bedroom and hits play. And what she discovers is that her daughter has been telling her the truth the entire time.
Can you imagine how bad she felt?
Yeah.
Wow.
According to Laura, she watched as much of it as she could on the camcorder's tiny little screen. It was Walter and her daughter engaged in a variety of sex acts. Laura says she went numb. She's devastated. Quote, I'm not sure what happened. I kind of went into a little shell, end quote. But she also said, quote, when I saw that videotape, he was never going to harm my daughter again. At that point, I knew that he was doing it. And there was no way for him to convince me otherwise, end quote.
Well, yeah, duh.
She said that she'd learned to deal with the physical and emotional abuse by Walter. Quote, I'd learned to hide the black eyes. I'd learned to hide the terror I had, but there's nothing that can take that image out of my mind, watching him have sex with my daughter, end quote.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like when you're a mother, you always think you could say whatever you want about me, but you leave my kids alone.
Yeah.
It's very mama bear, very protective.
Sure. Yeah.
You call me every name in the book. Don't
Right.
step forward and say one thing about my child. I can say something bad about my child, but you cannot.
You'll get into that, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't. Taking out my hoop earrings.
Yep, exactly.
Now, Laura knows that not only was her daughter telling her and everybody else the truth, since the year 2000, when she comes forward and says, he's groping my chest, Walter had raped her repeatedly, lied about it, had the teenager prosecuted, and then went right on abusing her.
Jeez.
I mean,
Wow.
the balls on this guy.
Yeah.
Laura turns off the tape and Walter walks back inside the house. She quickly hides the tape. She puts it right back where she found it. Walter tells Laura to be sure to pack up for a long trip to North Carolina. Now, at this point, Laura doesn't confront him. All she says to him is okay. And Laura puts this tape back exactly where she got it, because according to her, Walter was the type of person that if you moved something, he knew it. Quote, he knew where he placed things and how he placed them, end quote.
He was a control freak.
Absolutely a control freak. Now, Rob, on the other hand, has absolutely no idea where he puts things.
Yeah, I don't even know where my car keys are right now. Actually, I don't even know where my phone is right now.
It's
I was
true.
looking for it 2 seconds ago, and I have no idea where it is.
So, yeah. Laura continues to pack up. She's sick to her stomach. And Walter and the kids all go to bed, but Laura stays up. She's just sitting in the living room. She's pacing in the living room. She's replaying what she had watched over and over in her head. And the longer she thinks about it, the angrier she gets. And she couldn't take what had happened to her daughter away, but she could do one thing. She could make sure Walter never did it again.
Bum, bum, boom. I didn't even have to play it.
Nope, no need to play it today. In the wee hours of April 24th, 2004, before the sun even comes up, Laura walks into the bedroom while Walter is asleep. Laura's been up all night in the living room with the television on. She's not watching. She's ruminating. She's pacing. She looks at him lying in the bed and thinks, quote, what a sick son of a bitch, end quote. Yeah, I could think of even more expletives for this guy.
Yeah, I think she was being a bit kind.
Yeah, son of a bitch is kind.
Yeah.
She pulls the gun from under the bed and takes it back to the living room, where she snaps it open, slipped a shell into the chamber, and walked back into the bedroom where Walter is sound asleep, lying on his right side.
Okay.
She holds the gun less than a foot away from Walter's face and aims toward his left eye.
Wow.
And boom.
Gee whiz.
She shoots him in the head.
Wow.
Quote, I remember hearing the gun go off and running and saying, what the hell have I done? End quote.
Jeez.
Now, a shotgun blast is super loud.
Mm-hmm.
A 20 gauge shotgun blast is exceptionally loud.
Yep.
And this sound wakes up all three of Laura's kids. And they're out in the living room. They're asking their mom, what happened? What happened?
Right.
And Laura tells them, go back to sleep. She tells them, I don't know what happened. I don't know where the loud boom came from, but we're all okay. Everybody go back to bed.
Yeah.
When the kids go back to bed, Laura calls 911 and tells the 911 operator that she'd heard a gunshot. And when she went to check on her husband, Walter, she found that he had killed himself.
Okay.
Anne Arundel County Police and emergency show up, and Laura meets him at the door. She tells police the same story. I heard a gunshot, and my husband, Walter, has killed himself. Same story she tells the 911 operator. She's sticking to her story.
All right.
So the police go into the bedroom and find Walter in bed, and the 20 gauge shotgun is laying on the floor next to him in the floor. And police can see that he'd been shot in the head and at very close range.
Right.
And EMS arrives, and they're thinking, okay, it's a suicide. He shot himself in the head.
Yeah.
But then the detectives show up, and they're like, this doesn't look like a suicide.
Right.
This looks like a homicide just based on the position of Walter's body.
And the fact that he had probably never even touched the gun.
Well, Laura's not thinking that far ahead yet,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So the police take Laura and her 3 children to the police headquarters in Annapolis so they can talk to them.
Okay.
They separate Laura from the kids for questioning. They interview Laura in one room while next door they're interviewing her oldest daughter. Her other 2 children are just waiting with Laura's parents. The 2 boys are with Laura's parents and her 2 sisters who've come to the rescue.
Right.
In the interrogation room, Laura's sticking to her story. But Laura's pregnant 16-year-old daughter is right next door, and she tells the police her stepdad, Walter, hadn't killed himself. He'd been murdered.
Oh.
And she says she knew this because she was the one who pulled the trigger. She's
What?
pregnant, 16 years old, and she tells police she killed her stepfather. She confesses to a murder she didn't commit.
Gee whiz.
And the police are a little skeptical, so they ask her to demonstrate just how she'd killed Walter. Walk us through it.
Yeah.
And they give her the gun from the crime scene, and they ask her to show them how to load it and how she shot Walter. And when this happens and they hand her the gun, she didn't know how. She didn't even know how to load the shotgun.
Right.
And now the police are like, she's covering for her mother.
Yeah.
She's covering for her mother.
Right.
So police go to Laura and say, look, your daughter just confessed to murdering your husband, Walter. And when they come to Laura with this information, this is the following Monday, Laura tells the police the truth. Her daughter had been through enough. She wasn't going to let her take the rap for Walter's murder. And on Monday evening, Laura confesses, telling police that she was the one who pulled the trigger. So they start interrogating Laura really hard. They question her for 5.5 hours.
Wow.
And finally, Laura breaks down and tells the police exactly how she killed Walter. And what's more, she told them why she killed Walter. She's very forthcoming and descriptive about how he was raping her pregnant daughter and how she ended Walter. And the police are stunned. They all get in their squad cars and they rush back over to the Rogers house. They get this tape from where Laura tells them to find it behind the Playboy magazines.
Right.
And they watch it. And it confirmed everything Laura had told them. He was raping her daughter. And in order to protect her from her husband, she pulled the trigger and killed Walter.
Wow.
And at that point, they let Laura go. It's now April 26, 2004. She meets up with her children and her parents, who are all beside themselves. And Laura's pretty surprised that after she confessed to murder, they just allowed her to go home.
Right.
And she's very distraught. And police make her promise that she's not going to do anything stupid. They make her promise that she's not going to harm herself.
Right.
And police even went to Laura's dad and said she's really upset. She's just beside herself. She's distraught, and we're worried for her, and someone needs to stay with her. And her dad says, yes, of course, I'm going to take care of my daughter. I'll stay with her.
Sure.
Laura, her 3 kids, and her parents go to a restaurant to get something to eat. And here's the thing. The police were fine to allow Laura to leave on her own. But the prosecutors didn't share that same sentiment. They start reviewing the case, and while Laura is eating dinner, they go looking for her. They're going to haul her back in.
Jeez.
Prosecutor Laura Kissling and other prosecutors review the case, and it's decided that she would be charged with murder. Laura would be charged with murder. So they call her on her cell phone, and she tells police, if you're going to arrest me, don't do it in front of my children.
Right.
And the police agree. Laura is taken into custody and booked into the Anne Arundel County for murder 1. Murder 1.
Oh, my gosh.
She could face life in prison for killing Walter, or worse, she could face the death penalty.
Wow.
Laura's family hires Clark Ehlers as her defense attorney. And any human being with a modicum of compassion would side with Laura.
Of course.
But according to the law and the prosecutors, she committed murder and she confessed to it. It's pretty open and shut, right?
Right.
And when Laura is indicted, the prosecutors are like, we can't condone vigilantism, right? Otherwise, other people will take matters into their hands too, into their own hands. So they don't want to set a precedent.
But this is kind of like self-defense.
This is so many things.
Yeah.
It really is. It's so many things. It's battered wife syndrome
Yeah.
on top of sexual abuse of a minor.
Yeah.
So Laura's attorney, Clark, heads down to North Carolina where he discovers that Walter was a bad guy and had been for a long time.
Right.
And not only did he have a rap sheet, he'd sexually molested his sisters as children.
Jeez.
And again, as adults, his sisters. Meanwhile, Laura is seeing her kids only once a week and from behind glass. And Laura's parents are making sure the kids are able to see their mom.
Right.
In May of 2004, Laura's daughter gives birth to her baby. It's a little boy, and they do a DNA test, and it proves that Walter was indeed the father of that child.
Oh, my gosh.
And the baby was put up for adoption.
Wow.
And now with this new information, Laura's attorney, Clark Ehlers, is thinking it might be just enough to get Laura off the hook for murder one. Because if a jury hears the facts, they're going to agree with Laura that Walter needed to be killed.
Right.
On November 8th, 2004, the prosecutor's offices offers Laura a plea deal. Partly because they didn't want to take this case to court.
Right.
And partly because they didn't want to put Laura's daughter through the humiliation and emotional ordeal of testifying all about the sexual abuse she suffered.
Sure.
So they tell Laura, you can plead guilty to manslaughter, and then depending on the judge, the maximum you could serve would be 10 years in prison. She accepts this plea deal.
Oh, man.
The next day, November 9th, 2004, a handcuffed Laura Rogers walks into Circuit Judge Paul Hackner's courtroom in the Anne Arundel Circuit Court. She's going to plead guilty to the fatal shooting of her husband, Walter Gray Rogers. At the sentencing hearing, Laura's attorney asks for leniency based on all the physical and emotional abuse Laura endured, battered wife syndrome, not to mention the videotape and the DNA evidence that her young daughter's child was Walter's.
Mm-hmm.
He called Walter, quote, a person who took a sick and sadistic pleasure in killing the spirit of other people, end quote.
Yeah, to say the least.
An expert witness testifies at the sentencing hearing that Laura's actions were, quote, psychologically reasonable, end quote. It's natural to want to fight back, just as you were saying.
Yeah.
It's self-defense. It's a natural response.
Yeah.
And this is what she tells the court and the judge. And then Laura makes a statement to the court saying, quote, I ask the court to see that I'm able to go home and give these children the love that they not only need, but that they deserve, end quote.
Wow.
She's just like, please let me go home and take care of these kids.
Yeah,
We've been through so much.
Yeah.
Just let me go take care of these kids.
Yeah.
Judge Hackner goes back to his chambers where he watches for the first time the videotape.
Oh.
And then he's ready to sentence Laura in less than 2 hours, which we all know is either really good news or really bad news.
Yeah, exactly.
And when he comes back out to sentence Laura, Judge Hackner calls Walter Rogers, quote, a horrible human being, end quote. Then he sentenced Laura to the maximum 10 years in prison.
What?
Then he suspended all but the time she had already served, 198 days, and gave her 5 years probation.
Wow. Good for him.
Then the judge said to her, quote, you'll be released sometime this afternoon, end quote.
Jeez, that's great.
So she'd been in jail for almost 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen an interview with Laura who says that she has to live with the fact each and every day that she took somebody's life.
Right.
Maybe she didn't take an innocent life, but she still took a life.
Sure.
And whether he deserved it or not, you know, she still killed him.
Yeah, but he pushed her to her limits.
He pushed her beyond her limits.
Yeah.
And her kids are never going to be the same. The family's never going to be the same.
Sure.
In 2008, Laura's daughter, who at the time was 21 years old, She sued Anne Arundel County for negligence,
Good.
professional liability, false imprisonment. Remember, they took her away to juvie.
Yeah.
False arrest, and negligent supervision.
Wow.
Because in 2003, Laura's daughter went to the authorities and said that her stepfather was raping her and videotaping it. And not only did they not believe her, they charged her with filing a false police report.
That's amazing.
She sued for $1.2 million.
Nice.
Now, I looked everywhere to see if this was settled out of court, which is my guess.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find anything on the record about the county paying her something, which means it didn't go to court. I think it was probably just settled out of court. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
When the lawsuit was filed.
It's usually what they do.
So was she a murderer? Was she a vigilante? Was it justified? I mean, it's kind of like Ken Rex. Remember, everybody's like, this guy's got to die. Walter needed to die.
Yeah.
Walter needed to die. Or did he just need to go to jail?
Right.
I think the biggest point here is that nobody believed this young girl.
Yeah.
And instead of sticking to her guns, she had to recant everything that she said because she feared for her life and she was protecting her mother.
Right. Yeah.
So my heart just goes out to this entire family. It's a tragic case. I think the best outcome that could have ever happened actually did happen when the judge stepped up and said, I'm going to sentence you to 10 years because that's what the crime is supposed to get.
Right.
Time served and 5 years probation.
Right.
But that is the tragic story of Laura Rogers. And that's all I have to say about that.
You know, this whole thing was just tragic all the way around. I mean, but the most tragic part of the whole story is the fact they didn't believe the 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And she has to live with that for the rest of her life.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want you to know, I looked something up, and on a website called domesticshelters.org, statistically, women spend more time in jail for killing their abusive spouse than men who abuse and kill their abusive spouse do. Women stay longer in jail than the men who do the exact same crime.
Wow.
How about them apples?
Yeah.
How about them apples?
That's just
Yeah,
sad.
it's enough to just make you crazy, which was part of the reason that I wanted to do this podcast. My blood was boiling the more I thought about it as I researched it.
Yeah.
It's terrible. We do have a page at Hitched to Homicide that has all kinds of resources. So if you're in a relationship that you don't want to be in, a relationship that you want to be out of, go to our website because we have a whole list of resources for you.
Yep. We're here for the victims.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, speaking of non-victims.
Yes, we need to lighten it up. Oh,
let's visit some of these non-victims.
Yeah.
That are really stupid with a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right, number one today. Well, he didn't smell that one coming.
He didn't smell it coming?
Nope. A Florida man apparently thought he was safe when he set up a pot growing tent in a woods near a police dog training facility. A drug-sniffing dog in training discovered the operation while practicing in a nearby field.
Good boy.
Yep. In New Smyrna, reports the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. Yep, the dog became excited and pulled its handler off a trail into the woods and to the tent.
Oh my gosh, you couldn't have picked a worse spot, dude.
Yeah. Authorities found 79 pot plants and about a pound of cultivated marijuana. The investigation led agents to a nearby trailer and a 38-year-old suspect.
Oh.
Yeah, he was charged with 2 felonies.
I bet that puppy got some treats when he got back to
Good boy.
training.
Good boy.
He's telling all the other dogs, dude, this is easy. This stuff's easy.
It is. They just take me where the pot is.
Yep.
It's great. Okay, second one. Number 2 is some people are never satisfied.
Well, that's true.
Yep. A New Zealand parolee on home detention asked to be taken back to prison because he was, quote, sick of playing Xbox at home.
What?
Police said the 19-year-old man called police as bored and sick of playing video games.
Oh, my gosh.
And would rather serve the rest of his sentence behind bars, according to the New Zealand Herald.
Who wants to voluntarily go to jail?
Well, here's the kicker. Police said the teen had served 10 months of an 11-month home detention term, and with 1 month to go, had run out of Xbox games to play.
Oh.
The man got his wish and is now back in prison.
I bet he did. My heart bleeds for him.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh.
He had 30 days to go, and he's like, I don't have any more games. Let's just go back to prison.
Oh, that's just idiotic. Read. Find a book or two.
Exactly. All right, number 3, and finally, the grammar Nazi.
Well, that's kind of me sometimes.
Well, police said Leonard Burdick, 50, placed a pressure cooker with wires on the counter in front of the receptionist for Teachers Standards and Practice Commission.
What?
Yeah. He said the agency sign was missing a D, the letter D.
Oh, my gosh.
Burdick,
it bothered him that much?
Yes. Burdick tried to blow up the sign, but the bomb failed to detonate.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, once again, here's the kicker. He blamed the failure on a misspelled bomb-making instruction. Burdick was charged with disorderly conduct. Police said the pressure cooker was not a real bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was still charged.
Grammar matters.
It does.
Let's eat, Grandma. Let's eat, Grandma.
And if you're going to make a bomb-making instruction set, make sure that it's spelled correctly. Well, there you go.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, all you got to do is go to hitchedToHomicide.com where there's a pull-down menu.
Yep.
While you're there, you can also suggest a case, and you can tell us about your brush with true crime. Tell us about your true crime story.
Do it.
That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.